Hi and welcome everyone. We're going to go ahead and get started here. My name is Jenny McGee and I am an instructional designer in the e-learning division here at Camden County College. And our webinar today is on the very important topic of accessibility, and specifically looking at, I did not coin this term, but what they call the 7 pillars of accessibility. And before we get started, I do just want to cover a couple of things. If at any point in time you have a question or a comment, feel free to either use the raise your hand feature so that I know that you have something to share and then I can unmute you. Or if you'd rather, you can just go ahead and type it into the chat and I'll be happy to answer the question or share the comment or whatever it is. So first, let's look at our agenda. And I want to start with defining both accessibility and UDL, or the Universal Design for Learning, in case there's anyone in here that's not sure what I mean by those terms. And then we're going to look at what is being called the 7 pillars. And so we're going to go over each of these, what these mean, and I'm going to also show you how to use all of these accessibility features in Canvas. So we're going to be looking at creating headings in your online content using alt tags or alt text to describe pictures or images. We're going to talk about creating descriptive links, how to use color so that it is accessible. We're going to talk about creating lists and tables that can be read by screen readers, and then also, of course, captions for videos so that anyone that cannot hear or that may need, for whatever reason, to use the captions have that capability. So let's start by defining accessibility. And there's a little bit of variation on what you might see, but I like this definition. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but the highlighted part says accessible means that a person with a disability is afforded the opportunity to acquire the same information, engage in the same interactions, and enjoy the same services as a person without a disability in an equally effective and equally integrated manner with substantially equivalent ease of use. So when we think of accessibility, it's natural to kind of think solely about how to enable students with disabilities to have equal access to learning that a student without a disability would have. And that's great. And we do, of course, want to keep in mind that there will be students with disabilities accessing our online content. But I also want to make sure that we think about accessibility as part of the concept of the universal design for learning. So what is the universal design for learning? What do I mean by that? So when we look at this definition, universal design for learning results in accessibility for all learners. So when we say all learners, we mean that the principles of UDL truly benefit every learner, not just those with disabilities. And we'll look at some very practical examples of that in just a minute. But accessibility is really just a piece of the universal design for learning. It is the piece that we are focusing on today, and that's what we're going to be spending most of our time on. But I just want to point out that the universal design for learning goes beyond things like captioning videos and providing alt text for images. And the definition that Tom Tobin, who is kind of a UDL guru, uses is this right here, that UDL incorporates multiple means of engaging with content and people, representing information, and expressing skills and knowledge. So the universal design for learning goes beyond just equal access. It also incorporates multiple ways that students can show what they've learned, that they can access and interact with content, and multiple ways that that information is presented in an online course. So I don't want to belabor that point, but it is important to understand that accessibility is is so important. It's awesome, but it's really a piece of the concept of the universal design for learning. So UDL and accessibility benefit all learners. And these are just a couple of examples of this, but for example, if a student is trying to study or learn in a loud environment, or maybe a very quiet environment where they can't enable the audio for a video, or they wouldn't be able to hear it. Maybe they're doing it at work where they really can't put earbuds in, but they want to be able to look at their videos that are provided in their online course. They can enable the captions and be able to get the information without the audio. So that benefits all students, not just those that may have a hearing impairment. Using a mobile device. So UDL using accessibility is going to make it easier for students who are using different types of devices, like their cell phone or a tablet, to access that online information. Low bandwidth. So if a student is on a phone using their mobile data, or maybe they don't have great internet at home, there are features, for example, alt text, that will also benefit those students as well, even if they're not able to see an image because it won't load because of low bandwidth, not because they can't actually see it. Either way, that alt text is going to benefit the student. English language learners is another great example of someone that might really benefit from captions. And there's also just things like with color, making sure there's lots of contrast when you use colors in your course that are just good design practices also. Just make it easier for everybody who's accessing the course. So I just wanted to say that, going into detail of what UDL looks like in its entirety, which isn't really even possible, but it's really beyond the scope of this webinar. But I just wanted to define UDL and bring up the fact that accessibility is a very important piece of a bigger picture. And very quickly, before we move on, what UDL and accessibility also is not. So we're not talking about specialized accommodations, IEPs, or the way that Tom Tobin defines it, accommodations are making one change one time to help one person. Those things are very important. Of course, there are legal documents that have to be honored. So I'm not trying to say that you should ignore an IEP by any means, or its accommodations for an individual student. But having these 7 pillars of accessibility and the guidelines of UDL in place in an online course, regardless of whether we have a student with a documented disability in the course, is going to be very helpful in ensuring the success of all students. And if you've got the UDL and the 7 pillars of accessibility in place, you'll likely have less changes that you will have to make if you do have a student that needs an individual accommodation. All right, so we're going to go ahead and get into what these 7 pillars are. And again, I didn't use that term. I don't know if I love it, but it's 7 very important, crucial elements of accessibility. So I do want to show quickly what we're going to look at here. So I have a Word document here on the classification of living things. And what I'm going to do for each of these 7 pillars is to show you how you would accomplish this in Canvas. So I want it to be practical so that you know exactly what it's going to look like. We're going to be working in a page today, so using the rich content editor. But as you know, if you use Canvas, the rich content editor is throughout Canvas. So you would see these same tools in discussions and assignments and quizzes, as well as in the page that we're going to be working in today. By the way, all of these 7 pillars have similar tools in the Microsoft suite, so the Office suite, so Word, PowerPoint, all of those have those same types of built-in accessibility tools that we're going to look at in Canvas. And if you learn the ones in Canvas, or if you already know how to do it in PowerPoint or Word, it's going to look similar to you. So they're not identical, but if you kind of know how to do it in one place, it'll be a lot easier to know how to do it in a different platform. So let's talk about headings, and we'll look at how to create headings in a document. Headings are helpful because they create a table of contents basically for a screen reader. So when a screen reader is going through a text, it can jump from heading to heading if the user wants it to. It kind of provides a way for the user to be able to quickly navigate through a page. If it's just a whole big block of text that's all marked the same, then the screen reader is not going to have any way to quickly move or to differentiate between a heading and the body of the text. So because of this, it's not enough to just create a heading and make it a bigger size font. It has to be done using the heading styles in whatever authoring tool you're using, in this case, the rich content editor in Canvas. And you want to make sure that it's consistent throughout. And this will make a little bit more sense in a minute if you don't know what I'm talking about. But if you're using heading 3 for subheadings throughout a document and you're making them bold, then they should be bold throughout the document. So we're going for consistency. So we're going to go ahead and get into Canvas. And we're going to be working in this course today. So I've clicked on the Pages tab in the course, and I'm just going to click Add Page in the upper right corner. And what I want to do is I want to take this text that is over in my Word document over here, and I want to copy it and paste it into my rich content editor to save time. You might just do it by typing it straight in. So I'm going to copy all of my text here. And I'm just going to paste it right into my document. So I've got all my text. I don't really have any formatting in here. And I also want to get my title. So my title is Classification of Living Things. So you will see right next to the font size, you will see a drop-down menu that shows the different types of headings or just the paragraph setting that you can use. By default, it's going to automatically put all of the text in the rich content editor as just paragraphs. So it's going to treat all of the text currently the way it is now as being the same level of importance. So a screen reader at this point would kind of just have to read through everything. It's not going to provide any easy way for the user to skip through the text that they don't want or see what the structure of this page is. So we're going to fix that. Before we do that, the page title, you'll notice when you click on paragraph, you only have heading 2, 3, and 4. There's no heading 1 here, which would be the biggest. The reason for that is because heading 1 is saved for the page title. So classification of living things, when we click publish on this page, is automatically going to be interpreted by a screen reader as the heading 1 type. And just in case, I want to make sure that I'm being clear in defining our terms. So a screen reader would be a software that is used by someone usually with a visual impairment, but sometimes other people use screen readers besides those that have visual impairments, but it's going to read the content on the screen. So what we want to do is make this document easier for that screen reader to navigate. So I want this level 1 domain to be obvious that this is one of the headings, so that the screen reader can easily go through and find. Maybe I just want to skip to level 3 because I already read about levels 1 and 2. I could do that if I was using a screen reader. So what I need to do is just highlight whatever I want to be in heading 2. And again, I would want it to be consistent. So I'm going to put my levels here of the classification of living things, and I'm going to make them all consistent. They would all consistently be made heading 2. Now, I didn't actually go beyond levels 1 and 2 because this is just an example. You could also, let's say you wanted the immediate definition or this first sentence of information to also be a heading. You could do heading 3. We don't want to skip any heading levels, so we would just make these heading 3. And again, this would just be another point that the screen reader could use to tell what the format of the page is. So it's not really complicated, and you will see similar, it looks pretty similar in Word and in PowerPoint. You'll see these same headings that you can use. And again, it's not enough to just make a bigger size or make something bold. You have to actually designate it as the heading so that the screen reader knows how to interpret it. All right, so we've got our headings in here. Let's go ahead back to our PowerPoint so we can look at our next item, our next pillar. So our next pillar is important, and this gets forgotten a lot. And actually, when I was looking at images for this webinar, a lot of the web pages, I just kind of clicked to see if there was an alt tag on different images I was looking at. And a lot of times there wasn't. So unfortunately, these are things that are still going to be a struggle, not necessarily, hopefully, in Canvas, because Canvas makes it obvious that you need to add that alt text whenever you put an image in. But when someone is trying to use a screen reader just to navigate through a web page, a screen reader is not going to be able to tell the user what is in an image unless there's alt text associated with it. So we have a nice picture of King Henry VIII here. I don't know if it's a nice picture, but it's a picture. And so we're going to want to provide text that will describe this picture to someone that cannot see it. And again, this is another good example of a way that somebody that doesn't have a disability would benefit if an image doesn't load for some reason. And sometimes that might not even be a bandwidth issue. It could just be a web page issue. But the alt text will show up if the image doesn't load, so that anyone that is viewing that page and having an issue loading it knows what that picture was of. So when you're creating an alt tag, and we'll look at how to do this in a minute in Canvas, you want to describe the image. And it's so tempting. I always have to stop myself from typing of this. This is a picture of King Henry VIII. We don't want to do that because the screen reader itself is going to say a picture of before reading the alt text. So if you put a picture of, then it's going to repeat a picture of, which if there's a lot of pictures on a screen, I'm sure would be a little annoying to the person that is trying to use a screen reader to access it. So as difficult as it is, leave that out. When the screen reader gets to the image, it will say a picture of, and it will read whatever the alt text was. If you have an image that is purely decorative, you've got a swirl or something that is just there to sort of make your page look a little fancier or come off, be a little bit more vibrant, you don't have to describe that because that's not something that's important, that's part of the content that the student needs to know. And when you're writing your alt text, you can consider the context and purpose of the image. So the alt text may look different depending on what the purpose of the image is. So for example, if this image was being used in a course or an article about the history of the English royal family, appropriate alt text could just say King Henry VIII of England. Okay, that would probably be enough information. But let's say that it was for an article discussing royal fashions in the 16th century. In that case, you might want to let the reader know that this has describing what he's wearing. So you might say something like King Henry VIII of England wearing a fur-trimmed hat and cape, bedazzled shirt, and golden jewelry. So it can change depending on what the context is for that picture that you're using and what the purpose of including that image is. So if it's just decorative, you don't need to describe it, but think about, why did I include this image? What did I want my students to gain from that? And then put that into your alt tags. So let me go ahead and show you how you would do that in Canvas also. So I'm going to put an image in here, and I'm going to put it at the top. So when we insert an image in Canvas, we're going to click on this little picture icon, and I'm going to upload an image, that image of the lion that I showed you. So I'm just going to click on this rocket. It's going to take me to my pictures on my computer, and I'm just going to pick this lion classification. Okay, so with the picture here, underneath, you will see that it's asking me to describe the image. Here is the alt text field. And actually, I did this in another course, so I'm just going to grab that description. This is going to be kind of a long one because the information that's in here is important, and it's actually, the image itself has text on it. So I want to grab that too. So I don't want you to have to sit here and watch me type a whole lot. So let me go ahead into my image and I'm going to click edit. And image option, when I click on the picture, I can click image options. So you can do this if you have pictures or images already in your course that you didn't have alt text for. If you click edit in the page, click on the image, you'll see that image options come up. You can click on that. And then over here is the alt text that I had already put into my previous picture. So I'm just going to copy that. Move my menu out of the way. And then I'm just going to paste that in here. So you'll notice that I included basically everything that's on this chart here, because that's all important information. That's the purpose of including this image, is to show a specific animal and how that animal is classified. You'll notice here, if it says decorative image, you can check that box, and then the screen reader will just ignore it. If you check that box, it'll just pass right over. It knows that it doesn't have to even mention that to the learner because it's not really adding anything. So I'm going to go ahead and click submit. And now it's put my lion in there. And so a screen reader can read that and let the user know what the picture is of. All right. And again, I just want to, if anyone came in late, I do want to let you know or remind you that you are welcome. If at any time you have a question, feel free to either type into the chat or raise your hand. I'm not seeing anything so far. So the next thing that we want to look at is creating descriptive links. So screen readers are going to read a URL. If you put a raw URL in, for example, like this one, it's going to read out that whole thing to the poor user, which sometimes it might not be too bad, but something like this is a long thing for them to have to sit there and listen to, and it doesn't add anything to helping them learn. So we want to use descriptive text, and I'll show you how this is done. We also want to avoid click here, visit this site, click here for more, that kind of thing. And the reason for that is because if the person who is using the screen reader just wants to go through and see what the links are in a page, they can do that. But if all they're getting when they do that is click here, visit this website, that's not helpful. That doesn't tell them what the website is or what's going to happen when they click here. So we want to be descriptive so that the user knows exactly where they're going to be taken, and it's very easy for them to figure out if they want to click on that link or not. And screen readers will typically identify a link before reading it. So before it will read, it'll say link, accessible link text and appearance. And it will let the user know that that is a link. And so that if it's descriptive, it makes it easy for them to know if that's something that they want to click on or if they want to come back to that web page later. So let's look at how to do this. I have a link here, or we're going to stick with our classification of living things theme here. And I'm going to put this into my page. Now, this is the link. This is what it is. And I'm not going to leave it like this, but just so you know, we wouldn't want to put it in there like that because that's not going to help the student. So I'm going to take that out of there. What I want to do is type the descriptive text in here. So we could say something like, we could actually just name the link. So we could say science trek classification of living things. And again, the screen reader is going to let the student know that this is a link. So we don't need to say this is a link. We need to select the text, the friendly text or the descriptive text that we put in. And then up here at the top, there's going to be this link button. And by the way, you can do this with, this is an external link that I'm putting in because it's outside of Canvas, but you could do this with course links also. Let's say that you want to link a page to an assignment so that, or vice versa, so that students can quickly get from one place to another within a course. And you still would want to do it this way so that it's letting the student know exactly where they're clicking. But in this case, it's an external link. So it already has, since I highlighted that text, it already has my friendly text here. And then I just paste the link in and click done. And it's going to automatically put the underline with the blue. That's very important. People are used to that. They know that that generally means a link. So just as another kind of side note, on pages online information, I usually try to avoid underlining things. It's better to bold them if you're wanting to call attention to them, because underline has kind of become the universal sign that something is a clickable link. So we want to make sure that we've got our friendly links. And now we're going to move on to our next item here, and that is color. Now, you don't have to use color in Canvas. You can use color in Pages, and some people do. I don't want you to think that it's something that you have to include, but if you do decide to use colored text, it shouldn't be the sole means of conveying meaning. So you wouldn't want to say anything in red below is optional, anything in green is required, anything in blue is extra credit or something for a list of different assignments. Someone who's colorblind is not going to be able to tell the difference. And obviously someone that is visually impaired is probably not going to be able to either. So we want to be very careful about how we use color. And if you do, it shouldn't be the only way of the student being able to figure out what you mean by that. We also need adequate contrast. I don't see this so much anymore, but a long time ago, back when people were first starting to kind of create their own web pages, you would see some crazy background images, wild wallpaper patterns and stuff. And then people would have, you know, their yellow text on top of it, and there's no way that you could read it. People have, I think, kind of started to learn a little bit, but if you need a rule of thumb because you like color, if you have a color wheel and you look at, try to use colors as, so you could do a yellow. If you really wanted to do yellow text, you could put it on a blue background or vice versa. Or you could, of course, use just black and white, makes it easy. But if you like to use colors, it's fine. Just make sure that there's enough contrast that someone that can't see the colors can still read. Oops. We do recommend avoiding red on green or green on red. So green text on a red background and vice versa. Green and red are the most common colorblind colors. So if someone might be partly colorblind, they can't see red or green, but they can see all the other colors. And because it's so common, it's best to just stay away from that color combination. And I will show you in just a minute that the Canvas accessibility checker will help with that and will let you know if there is a contrast issue, if it's going to be difficult for the student to read. So let's get back into our rich content editor. And I just kind of want to show you what the accessibility checker is going to do. So let's say I'm being creative here and I'm highlighting my text. This is the text color button, so I can click on the drop-down menu and I have different options. Let's click yellow, click light yellow here. Okay, very difficult to read. You'll notice over here, I have 4 items here. This is the accessibility checker. And it's letting me know it went from 3 to 4 as soon as I put that yellow text in there. So if I click on the accessibility checker, it's going to let me know that this is a contrast issue. There's not enough contrast. And so minimum contrast ratio of 3 to 1. So I would need to make sure that I fix that. So the accessibility checker is nice, and we're going to use this like that a couple more times so that I can show you what else it can do. So I'm going to change this back to black. This went back to 3, and we're going to address these other issues that it's found in just as we go through. But just keep that in mind if you are wanting to use color. Make sure that you do it judiciously and in a way that it can enhance and not obstruct learning. So the next pillar of accessibility is lists. So there's certain ways that we want to format lists in Canvas or Word or PowerPoint or web pages, whatever medium we're using. So this will allow you to link a group of related items. That's what a list is, right? But you have to use it in the Canvas list tool so that the screen reader recognizes it as a list, because the screen reader will let the user know list before it starts reading it, so that the person knows that the next things that are coming up is going to be a list of related items. So if you have an ordered list, you can use numbers or letters. And if it's just a random list, like this is just kind of a list of different dog breeds, you can just use bullets. You shouldn't create kind of what they call a false list, which would just be hitting return to make another line. That may work fine for someone who is just reading it themselves, but again, a screen reader is not going to know that those items are supposed to be connected in a list. So let's look at our text here. And we have basically a list of all of the different kingdoms of living things. And basically all I would want to do is just highlight that text and then come up here and I can choose what type of list. And it's very small. It's probably hard to see. I can zoom in a little for you. You've got several different types of bullets that you can use. And then you also have numbers, letters, and Roman numerals. So any of those would be fine. A screen reader is going to know how to interpret and read any of these. In this case, since they're not necessarily in an order, I'm just going to use bullets. And it's as simple as that. So just highlight them, click the type of list that you want, and now the screen reader is going to know how to interpret that. All right, so now tables. Tables, of course, are used to arrange and display data, and they can be very effective for people that don't have any visual impairments, that aren't trying to use a screen reader. But they can be very complicated for a screen reader or someone who's listening, and I'll show you an example toward the end. I'm going to show you what it looks like when you're using a screen reader. But I would never, I mean, I guess if I was visually impaired, hopefully my auditory processing skills would have to make make up for my issues with seeing, hopefully, because tables are tough to, even if they are well designed, it's a tough way for a person using a screen reader to try to digest information. So we never want to use them just to format a page layout. So you wouldn't want to create a table and have, let's say, your picture on the one side and then your contact information in the other cell next to it. That's not how you want to use those, because the screen reader is not going to know how to interpret that. It's important to describe in a caption or page text, and captions really work best because then the screen reader will associate that caption or description with the table. We want to have descriptive row and column headers so that the screen reader knows how the table is configured. And we want to try to keep it simple. And I mean that in a couple ways. The first is that you probably aren't going to want to have a huge long table be the only means of this information. So if it is something that you're looking at a table and saying, this really is the best way for probably most of my learners to be able to get this concept, I'm not saying don't use it, but you could always maybe have a paragraph or something else, some other source of that same information elsewhere in your course that might be easier for someone who would be using a screen reader. The other thing I mean by simple is we don't want it to be a complex table, meaning that there are merged cells and things like that. That is going to be kind of outside what a screen reader can really handle. So keep it as simple as possible. And my recommendation would be, if you have another way that you can display information or share information that is just as good, maybe use that instead of the table. But sometimes tables are very important. So I do want to show you how to create an accessible table in Canvas. So I have my table over here. This is basically going to be the classification of a Hawaiian goose as an example. And so I'm going to just paste my table in here. Okay, Canvas automatically recognized it as a table because it came from Word. If you were going to type this directly into the page, you would want to make sure that you did it using the table tool. You'll notice since I made my screen bigger, some of my icons, I now have to click on these 3 dots to access. So you would want to start with a table, insert it, choose how many rows and columns you want. But in this case, I don't have to do that since I already had the table created in Word. So the couple of things here. The first one is we want to create a caption that's associated with this table. So in order to do that, you're going to make sure that you have the table selected, and you can tell that I do because it has a blue line around it and it's got these blue squares in the corners. And then I want to click on Table Properties. And it's going to show me the width and height and all of those things. But the thing that I'm interested in here is the caption. So I'm going to click on Show Caption and then just click Save. And what it's going to do is just give me a space above the table where I can type or paste my caption. So in this case, I'm actually just going to copy this from my Word document. And I'm just going to paste it right in here. So when the screen reader gets to this table, it's going to identify it as a table, and then it's going to read the description so that the student knows exactly what is being described in that table. The other important thing that we need to make sure is that we identify a header column and header rows so that when the screen reader is reading it, it knows how to read it and what each row and column is. And you'll notice I now have a 4 again here. And that's because it's going to have noticed that there are no headers for my table. So all I really need to do, because I have a header row which says what each of these things is: classification, meaning, characteristics, and then I have these that are going to let you know what is in that row. So all I need to do here is click header, row, and column. And basically that tells Canvas that the top row is going to be headers for the columns, and the first column is going to be header for the rows. And it will automatically create these as headers. So that's all I have to do for that part. And it's going to let the screen reader know how to read it. Still going to be a little complicated for the student who's listening to it to try to put all these things together, but it's better than just having a table where the user has no idea what all of that information is. So let's move on, and closed captions is our next item here. So this is a big one. There have been multiple institutions of higher learning that have been sued over not providing captions in their online courses. This is kind of like a basic one that we want to make sure that we always have. And again, it is helpful even for people that don't have a hearing disability. It could be English language learners or someone who is watching a video somewhere where it's hard to hear. So how do we caption videos? It's very time consuming if you're having to do it manually. That is an option though. If you don't want to use the other options we're going to talk about, you could type up a transcript, but even a short video is going to be a pretty long transcript. So my recommendation is YouTube. That's what we use in e-learning, where we store all of our tutorial videos. I'll be uploading this recorded webinar to YouTube after we're done so that I can get captions on this video. The other good thing about YouTube, which is a side note, is just that you can store everything there, so you're not using up your storage space in your course. But YouTube's captioning software is really, really good. I actually was looking at a video that I did the other day. It doesn't put punctuation in really. It kind of just shows the words along with the flow of what you're saying. So you can add in punctuation, but I really had one thing that I had to fix as far as spelling went, or it misinterpreting a word that I said. So I recommend it as your best option, and it's free, which is always great. If you don't like YouTube, and if you have screen capture software that you use, I use Screencast-O-Matic. Those generally will always have captioning enabled built into that software. I know Screencast-O-Matic is not that good because that's what I used to use a long time ago, before we started using YouTube, and I would have to make a lot of changes to make sure that it was accurate. So it's not as developed as YouTube's is, but at least for Screencast-O-Matic, I can't really speak to some of the others, but that is an option if you really don't want to use YouTube to host your videos. If you do want to use YouTube for your videos, I just want to show you how you can get into your video to view the captions and edit them if necessary. So this is the e-learning. It's still called distance learning, but everything's here. So we're going to, I think, stick with it. But this is where we store all of our tutorial videos. And so what you would just need to do is go into YouTube after you've uploaded your video. You can click on the video, and you'll see over here on the left-hand side different options. And I'm going to click on the subtitles option here. And you'll see where over on the right-hand side, it's going to say duplicate and edit. And that's because it already created captions for this, but it's giving me the option to duplicate those captions and then go in and edit them if I need to. So I'm going to go ahead and click that duplicate and edit, and I'm going to click continue. And you're going to see that it looks like this. So I can come in here, I can push play on my video here, and it looks like it's still loading. But I can click play on it when it loads, and I can type along to fix anything that needs to be fixed. There we go. So I can play it, and it's going to, let me enable my share the sound. Sorry about that. So we're going to go ahead and get started. So we put Jenny McGee, right? This is Jenny McGee. I think I do know everyone in here today. So welcome. And I can also click this pause while typing checkbox. So if I have to come in and change my name from Jenny Mickey to Jenny McGee, I can do that. And if it was playing, it would pause while I type. So it's a lot faster than trying to do all of this. This is an 11-minute video, and this is all of the text that I would have to type from scratch if I was wanting to do it that way. So I don't recommend doing it that way. You could always save a draft so that you can come back and finish it later. But again, YouTube is generally really good, I find, and it does a good job of creating accurate captions, and then you just might have to go in and tweak. And then you would just click publish, and it's going to put your changed captions in there. You'll notice you can still see the ones that it came up with automatically, but I can delete those when I'm done so that it won't give the option for anyone to use these captions. It will only give the option to use the ones that I edited. Okay. So now automatically whatever I edited is going to show up for the captions. And then our seventh, oh, I apologize. That was our last one. So what I want to do now is I'm going to give you kind of a screen reader demo here. So I want you to kind of see what a screen reader, what it looks like for someone using a screen reader. And by the way, we have a Read Speaker that's built into Canvas, but it's a little bit different. It's a little bit less robust than a screen reader is. I tried to kind of use that to see what it would look like, but it sort of just reads exactly what's on the screen. It doesn't do what a real screen reader does as far as identifying links and lists and those types of things. So I do want to show you what that looks like when someone is using a screen reader, just so you can see what the student would be experiencing. So let me pull this up here. So we're here are our videos. And so I'm just going to go ahead and play this. And I'm going to ask at the end, what do you see? You can even kind of look at it now and probably identify some issues with this that would not be accessible. So I want you to sort of look at that, and then I'm going to open it up. So if anybody has anything that they saw that they know is not correct that they want to share, then you can do that. So let's go ahead and look at this video.
Heading level 1, meet your instructor. Image of me, image. Heading level 3, 2 items. Name, Sally Hansen. Heading level 4, mini biography. Hi, I am Sally and I am teaching 3rd grade art class at Johnson's Middle School. I love art and design, and in my free time, I like to paint still nature and create mosaic paintings. My favorite season is winter and my favorite color is orange. Find my contact information in the purple text below. Heading level 2, contact information. Office hours, Mondays from 2 p.m. Telephone. Link, 213-123-4567. Links to an external site. Email. Link, shans123@k12rtchsol.com. Website. Link, www.k12rtchsol.com. Links to an external site. Heading level 4, additional contact information. 1. If you need additional help navigating Canvas, please contact Mark Wahlberg at link, markwall@k12rtchsol.com. 2. If you need to get supplies, please find these at link, www.artsupply.com. Links to an external site. I am also available for the drop-in hours on Wednesdays from 9 to 10 a.m. Here is the agenda for the next 2 weeks. Table 2 columns, 3 rows. Weeks. Column 1 of 2. Supplies. Column 2 of 2. Row 2 of 3. Week 1. Column 1 of 2. Colored pencils and A4 art pad. Column 2 of 2. Row 3 of 3. Week 2. Column 1 of 2. Various magazines, scissors and A5 art pad. Column 2 of 2. End of table. You are current.
Okay. So does anybody have, and again, you can type into the chat, or if you would rather raise your hand and share, does anyone see anything or hear anything that you know is not complying with accessibility guidelines? And if you want to type them in the chat, go ahead and I'll share them with the rest of the group. Or you can also raise your hand if you'd like. Okay, so someone said the contact information in purple text below. So that is definitely an issue, because if you were colorblind or you weren't able to, or you were visually impaired in another way, the only thing that's letting you know, I mean, it does say contact information, obviously. So, but we would probably want to, and you'll see in the next, which is a correct version, where it's not just purple, it's also bolded. So something as simple as that. Someone else mentioned that this art and design is not going to be a good enough contrast. So this is difficult for me to read. I can imagine someone with low vision or vision impairment might not even be able to see that. Anything else that anyone sees? All right, so no one said this yet, but the webpage artsupply.com isn't too bad, but we still would want to just make this friendly text, as well as an email address. We could just say contact Mark Wahlberg and make that a link, and it will be very nice and descriptive for someone that's looking for a link and still accomplish the same thing. So just before we finish and I open it up for questions, I want to show this version, which is fixed. So you can see, find my contact information in the purple and bold text below. So that makes it easy if someone can't see purple. This is bold text, so they should be able to see that. And they also fixed that contrast issue. So I'm going to go ahead and play this quickly, and then if you have any questions or comments or anything else that you would like to add, you can go ahead and raise your hand or type it into the chat, and I'll be happy to get to it as soon as we're finished with this video.
First heading, heading level 1. Meet your instructor. Sally Hansen, your 3rd grade art instructor. Image. Heading level 2. Your teacher, Sally Hansen. Heading level 3. Mini biography. Hi, I am Sally and I am teaching a 3rd grade art class at Johnson's Middle School. I love art and design, and in my free time, I like to paint still nature and create mosaic paintings. My favorite season is winter and my favorite color is orange. Find my contact information in the purple and bold text below. Heading level 2. Contact information. Office hours, Mondays from 2 to 4 p.m. 16 Point Lado, a shade of orchid 4. Telephone, 213-123-4567. Email. Link, Sally Hansen. Website. Link, Johnson's Middle School, links to an external site. Heading level 3. Additional contact information. List 3 items. Bullet if you need additional help navigating Canvas, please contact. Link, Mark Wahlberg. Bullet if you need to get supplies, please find these on 2 of 3. Link, art supplies, links to an external site. Bullet I am also available for the drop-in hours on Wednesdays from 9 to 10 a.m. 3 of 3. End of list. Heading level 4. Below is the agenda for the next 2 weeks. 2-week agenda. Table 2 columns, 3 rows. Weeks. Column 1 of 2. Supplies. Column 2 of 2. Row 2 of 3 weeks. Week 1. Column 1 of 2. Supplies. Colored pencils and A4 art pad. Column 2 of 2. Row 3 of 3 weeks. Week 2. Column 1 of 2. Supplies. Various magazines, scissors and an A5 art pad. Column 2 of 2. End of table. You are current.
Okay. So hopefully you were able to see a couple of things that were a little more subtle. So for this list, it said bullet, and it let the user know that there was a list here. It also, I didn't even pick up on the first time, there was no alt text for the image, so it lets the user know that there is a picture here of the teacher. And then another thing, this is properly formatted, but you can see how complicated tables are. Even this very simple table that is properly formatted for accessibility still is, it's kind of a cumbersome way to transmit information via screen reader. So again, if you can do it in a different way, it might be present that same information, or present it in a table and a different way at the same time would be a great way to do it. All right, so I know that's a lot to absorb. Again, this is going to be posted in the Canvas Faculty Hub in the recorded webinars tab, so you can always access it there if you want to review it. I will also put the slide deck in there so that you can access that too. And let me go ahead and put our contact information up for you. So there's our contact information. If you have any questions or concerns about this or anything else related to e-learning, feel free to reach out to us. This is our shared inbox that we always check, and this is our shared number. It rings all of our phones, so you'll be able to get one of us. So I have not seen any questions come in, so I am going to hang around for another couple of minutes, but that is all that I have for you today. So if you don't have any questions for me, then I just want to say have a wonderful afternoon, evening, and thank you so much for attending this webinar on the very important topic of accessibility.